The second wave of immigration, or Second Aliyah, to Eretz Israel begins in 1904. As in the first Aliyah, pogroms play a role, especially the infamous Kishinev pogrom of April 1903. What is different is the extent to which the Zionist Russian and Polish youth of this Aliyah are imbued with the revolutionary socialist ideas then sweeping the Russian intelligentsia. No sooner do these socialist pioneers, or halutzim as they are known, arrive than they set up rival political parties, the Hapoel Hatzair and the more dogmatic Marxist Poalei Zion. Between them, they have barely 150 members. Historian Walter Lacour writes,
Against this backdrop, the solemn speeches and writings about the historical mission of the working class and the necessity of the class struggle make strange reading.
On one thing the newcomers agree: the first Aliyah has become a landed gentry, the hated class enemy. David Ben-Gurion, who quickly becomes the leader of the Marxist Poalei Zion, accuses the first Aliyah of selling their own youthful aspirations for base silver. He concedes that the first Aliyah takes an equally dim view of the newcomers, viewing them as scruffy radicals, more talented at strikes than hard work.
We talked much, but in the eyes of our prospective employers, our capacity for farm work, our physical stamina in the face of poor diet, relentless heat, malaria, and the back-breaking tasks required to cultivate that arid, unyielding land impressed them little.
Luckily for the new arrivals, they find an ally in the World Zionist Organization. In paying for land and development, it would provide the financial salvation for the second Aliyah that Baron Rothschild did for the first. The agricultural pioneers of the second Aliyah thus also become dependent on donations from abroad. Ironically, these donations are chiefly supplied by small bourgeois businessmen, members of the scorned class enemy. Theodor Herzl had been skeptical of settlement without political backing, the so-called practical Zionism of both the first and second Aliyah. In The Jewish State, he wrote,
"It continues till the inevitable moment when the native population feels itself threatened and forces the government to stop a further influx of Jews. Immigration is consequently futile unless we have the sovereign rights to continue such immigration."
But after Herzl's death in 1904 and the dead end in negotiations with the Sultan, the Zionist organization, for lack of other options, turns from political to practical Zionism. In 1908, the Zionist organization establishes the Palestine office in Jaffa, which, under the leadership of Dr. Arthur Rupin, will become the central agency for Zionist settlement activities. Rupin agrees to support the first communal settlement, or kvutzah. In 1910, 10 men and 2 women settle in what becomes Degania. What begins as a way to escape the traditional system of managers, overseers, and daily wages develops into a communal ideology. For labor Zionists, the kibbutz, a larger version of the kvutzah, comes to represent the model for a future society. Labor becomes a kind of religion. Lacour writes,
They were the strangest workers the world had ever seen. Manual labor for them was not a necessary evil, but an absolute moral value, a remedy to cure the Jewish people of its social and national ills.
For many, the difficulties prove too great. At least 40%, in some years as many as 80%, end up as Yordim, or those who abandon the land. Writer-pioneer Yosef Chaim Brenner says of them,
They come, they see, and they return.
Those who stay grow accustomed to the hard life, even embrace it. Malaria becomes a mark of honor. Hannah Katzenelson is joyful.
I have finally been privileged to be malarial. I have been hallowed. Now I am a real worker. I lie on my bed on the floor. My fever rises, and I feel so good. Malaria.
Most important, those who stay provide the leadership and create the core institutions which shape the Yishuv, as the Jewish community of Palestine is known, and later the State of Israel. They will become the Jewish state's first leaders, most famously Ben-Gurion, but also Israel's next prime ministers, Moshe Shertok and Levi Eshkol, and two presidents, Yitzhak Ben-Tzvi and Zalman Shazar. While the agricultural workers are the political and intellectual elite of the Second Aliyah, they are not the majority. Other immigrants start the first all-Jewish city. Begun on a stretch of sand dunes, it is named Tel Aviv. The beginning of World War I marks the end of the Second Aliyah. By 1914, there are 94,000 Jews in Eretz Yisrael, a sixth of the Arab population. The community is still small, and as war will prove, highly vulnerable. The Ottomans begin to expel Jews, viewing them as a foreign element. Herzl is proven right. Without political support, colonizing efforts are built on sand. What rescues Palestine's Jewish community is the conquest of Palestine by the British. For the first time in a long time, the Jewish people can look to the future with optimism. The Turks are gone from Palestine, and an enlightened Western nation has taken its place, one which has promised to build a Jewish national home. Thanks to the work of the Second Aliyah, a framework for that home is already in place. The Jewish state, once only the province of dreamers, now appears on the cusp of reality.